So I've done a few reactions now to this channel, but I really like her videos. So when I was looking for another Christmas video to do, I found hers and thought, this is perfect. There were actually a few things in it that I found really surprising in terms of her talking about the difference between British and American Christmases, because it gave me an insight into where Australia fits in all that. And some things about American Christmases were quite surprising for me. So this is her video, 9 Ways British Christmas Was a Huge Culture Shock to an American. And let's look at it in terms of Australia. So let's jump in.
Hello and welcome to the Christmas edition of Girl Gone London, where today we're talking about 9 Christmas culture shocks I encountered as an American moving to the UK. Because I have a long list. And it does involve Christmas pudding. Christmas culture shock number 1 are Christmas crackers. Americans would think of a Christmas cracker as a type of cracker that you eat at Christmas. Something like this, with butter or jam or whatever you want to put on it. But Christmas crackers in the UK are not meant to be consumed. They are this thing, and you crack them open on Christmas Day, and there's some sort of little trinket inside, which is not anything of importance, mostly some sort of like junk toy, but there are also typically either games or jokes that you can go around the table and share. And the thing that confused me the most about Christmas crackers is that I feel like every family and every gathering have different ways of doing them. Some people break open their own cracker, some people you hold on to the ones of people next to you and you all do it at the same time. Some people get crazy and you like cross your arms. I feel like everyone has their own cracker opening technique, and so you're just this American 19-year-old in this foreign land, have no idea what's about to happen. You're like, are we about to do fireworks on Christmas? Like, what is in this package? And then you find out it's like the world's tiniest ruler and a really bad joke. And that is the magic of a Christmas cracker.
I was utterly amazed to realise that Americans don't have Christmas crackers. How ripped off would you feel? Sure, the more El Cheapo ones that you buy at the supermarket do just have plastic trinkets that you tend to lose. And yeah, they have the most corny jokes ever, but that's just part of the tradition. You know, it's not Christmas Day unless you have a really good groan over a really bad cracker joke. And you've got to wear those paper hats. Okay, admittedly I don't. I have ADHD and I can't stand the feel of those things on my head. So the Christmases when I have put them on my head, they've usually lasted probably 30 seconds, if that. You can actually tell the people who have sensory issues on Christmas Day because they're the ones who won't wear the hats for more than a few seconds. But imagine not having that tradition. Also, can I just comment on this comment that she made about some people open the crackers on their own? That's wrong. That is so wrong. If you do that, you need to change what you do. The whole point of Christmas crackers is the fun of being the person that gets the bigger end. You have to crack someone else's cracker with them. Obviously, they still get the toy, the hat, the joke, but part of the fun is being the one to get the bigger part of the cracker. Now, I'm just going to comment that at least these days you can get some pretty decent quality Christmas crackers. We've had a few where we've paid the extra money and got really nice things inside them. I think last year's Christmas crackers were stones like amethyst and stuff like that. And I think I got an amethyst, which is, you know, why that comes to mind. And it was just something really nice and something a little different. We've had other ones in the past that have had more upmarket trinkets. And it's nice. If you're willing to spend the extra money, you can actually get some really nice Christmas trinkets. Or you can go to Spotlight and you can actually get a trinket, a cracker making kit of your own and make more individualised Christmas crackers where you can put whatever you like in them.
Next on my list, and I'm just gonna go ahead and break all of your hearts with this, is Christmas pudding. Which is this thing. This is not a real Christmas pudding. This is some sort of Christmas pudding jug that I have literally no idea why I have. I was looking through my Christmas decorations. Like, it is a weird combination of over-the-top American decorations, as well as some like British-themed Christmas decorations. It's a very confusing pile. But this is what a Christmas pudding kind of looks like. And if you're not familiar, which most people in America aren't, Christmas pudding is like a really dense, like fruitcake, spongy, not super spongy, like sponge, but it's really dense, and it's eaten on Christmas Day, hence the name Christmas pudding. Americans do not have Christmas pudding on Christmas, and I didn't know what to expect when I was trying this for the first time. Now, Christmas pudding seems like a polarizing topic every time I mention it, so please feel free to weigh in on Christmas pudding below. Let me know if you enjoy it, who does the best one, because I bet it's someone related to you. Now, I have been very open about many things on this channel, but one of them specifically is that I strongly believe Christmas pudding is an acquired taste. The first time I had ever tried it was when I first moved to the UK, and it was my first Christmas here, and I went in not knowing what to expect, and I have to say, it was a lot. Now, it's very possible I do not have good taste. As you also know, I mostly just enjoy beige foods that don't taste of anything. So I'm not claiming to be Gordon Ramsay over here. I fully appreciate those of you who do like Christmas pudding. I just feel like it's not for me. I feel like when it comes to something like Marmite, which is also an acquired taste, I feel like I'm closer to that than to Christmas pudding on the spectrum of how close Kaylin is to enjoying classic British food items.
Okay, well, I'm just going to say that when I look at that one, it doesn't look overly appealing. It looks like they put a lot of prunes or something in there, but it's not like a really nice mix of fruit. Maybe it's a more traditional one, but yeah, that one doesn't look overly appealing to me. I love Christmas pudding. I can't believe Americans don't have Christmas pudding. They are so ripped off. And, you know, it's not about the pudding, it's about what you have with the pudding. I don't like custard, so I tend not to do it with custard. But, you know, being typical Australians, we go with the cream and ice cream. I wonder if they do that in the UK, add ice cream with their Christmas pudding. But, you know, you can go all out. If you like custard, then you have your brandy custard with cream and ice cream with your Christmas pudding. That is, of course, before or after your slice of pav, because Christmas isn't Christmas without a nice slice of pav.
The next thing on my list is something cultural. So Christmas Day in the UK is the same number of hours as in America, I believe. But when it comes to how long we spend doing Christmas at someone's house, it tends to be a little bit different, and there's a reason why. Because in the UK we have Boxing Day, which is a whole nother day off after Christmas on the 26th, typically people will often choose to spend Christmas in one location. Maybe if you have kids or you're at home and then you travel to like your parents' house or something, maybe you would spend it in two, but you're certainly not typically doing the rounds like around all of your family and extended relatives. And this is because there is more time, i.e. the next day, to go to the other side of the family that you haven't seen or something like that. But in America, the day after Christmas is just the 26th of December. It means absolutely nothing. It is not a day off. You might have it off, but it's not any sort of national holiday or named event or guaranteed day off. And so you are trying to cram Christmas into one day. And if you have kids, this could mean stopping by multiple grandparents' house on one day. That definitely was the case for me many years growing up. I remember getting in the car and going from place to place. Now, as a kid, this was amazing. You just kept showing up to houses with new piles of presents, so I'm not actually knocking the tradition, but it's just something to note that typically I feel like in the UK, you spend a longer amount of time at someone's house on Christmas Day, whereas it's more common in the US to kind of drive around, especially if you have family maybe who aren't going to be doing Christmas in the same exact place, but are within driving distance.
Okay, so for me growing up, it was always lunch with one side of the family, dinner with the other side of the family. And yeah, you did spend so much time there. But that's because that whole side of the family would be there. How horrible would that be to just be spending most of Christmas Day just driving around? What that kind of it ruins the day, you know? It's about being able to spend quality time with your family. And if you're dashing in just to exchange presents and niceties and maybe a quick meal or something, that that just spoils the whole Christmas Day thing. You know, you're meant to stay there until you're just about falling asleep after your meal. And then you move on to the next family. Have your dinner, feel like you're falling asleep, head home. As for not having Boxing Day in America, well, in Australia, I mean, my experience of Boxing Day has always been barbecues. Either with someone who is a close friend of the family, or I know for many, many years, because my uncle has quite a large property, even though we would do Christmas with his family quite often, like they would, when I was young, his whole family would still come and join us for Christmas. But then we'd go and just have a Christmas barbecue at his place on Boxing Day. So Boxing Day is just like the more relaxed day for catching up with people. You tend to be in one place, just have a quiet, relaxed barbecue, maybe watch the start of the Sydney to Hobart yacht race. Imagine not having that. That's the wind down after Christmas. Of course, it's not surprising that in the UK it's not a tradition to do barbecues on Boxing Day because you would freeze your butt off. But it's certainly something that lends itself well to Australia.
The next thing on my list is the panto. Now, I've done a video specifically about the history of the panto and how it became such a classic British tradition on my Patreon. You can find that here. But in terms of a culture shock, when you come to the UK as an American and someone says, would you like to go to the panto? This means nothing to you. I couldn't even have guessed what a panto might be. Turns out it's short for pantomime, which I'm still not even sure I would have been able to tell you what it was. But essentially, around the holiday season, how would I describe this? A panto is a show that does not take itself too seriously, and typically they are in a standard format in terms of they'll do Cinderella or Peter Pan or Aladdin or something like that, and it's mostly just a mess. There's audience participation, so you have to shout things back to the actors. The acting is purposefully overacted. You have a lot of gender swapping when it comes to roles. You have local jokes and humor. So if you go to see a panto in Birmingham, they will have different jokes than if you go to see a panto in London. And it's just this kind of like crazy, festive British holiday tradition. Typically, they're going to be something you can take the kids to, though you can find some that are more adult humor, but typically it's kind of like a family day out at the panto. And as I mentioned, we have nothing of the sort in the US that I can think of. If we do go to a show around the holidays, we would go to just like a performance of A Christmas Carol or maybe something like The Grinch live in theater. We would go to a show around Christmas, but we don't have a concept of a panto. And while I have definitely been here long enough now to understand, appreciate, and enjoy a panto, the me that was sitting in that seat for the very first time seeing a panto was definitely confused.
So, I don't think our pantomime culture in Australia is quite as strong as it is in the UK. But I know, like in Tasmania, for example, it was just standard to take a class of students to a pantomime as an end of year excursion. And the pantos would put on daytime sessions for schools. And, you know, that's the whole point of pantos, I think, of them being aimed at kids. That said, I have to say I love the spin-off that has occurred in Hobart, and that is the summer play in the park. So there's always at the Botanical Gardens every year something that is not quite as corny as a pantomime, but still that kind of child-focused acting, usually something like Alice in Wonderland or Shakespeare or something like that, but where basically the crowd follows the actors around the Botanical Garden and they have different scenes in different spots, and it's just a wonderful evening. You take your picnic blanket, your picnic basket, maybe a bottle of wine, there's no problems with that. And it is really, really nice, and so many people love doing it. I haven't seen anything like that here around Bendigo. I'm not sure if the Botanical Gardens here in Bendigo would even be big enough for that, because a lot of these regional botanical gardens are kind of itty bitty. But it would be something that would be really cool to see down in Melbourne.
The next thing on my list is something that we're not familiar with in America that all of you British people are going to be like, this is such a classic, and that is the Snowman. Now, I'm doing a whole upcoming video about the Snowman, or incorporating the Snowman, but essentially the Snowman is an animated children's Christmas television film that follows a boy and a snowman, and it is honestly just a cultural icon in the UK, but we are not exposed to it in the US. We are really not familiar with it. It is something that is very culturally British, and so I had never seen it before coming to the UK.
Okay, that's not me cutting her off mid-word, that's actually her editing. Now, I've not seen this in movie format, but that picture looks quite familiar to me. Someone fill me in, is this the story where at the end the snowman basically melts? Because I do remember a children's book, and I'm guessing that if there is a movie that it is probably based on the book, and the snowman becomes friends with the boy, and at the end the snowman melts. Correct me if I'm wrong. That said, the movie is definitely not something that you would consider to be iconic here in Australia. We tend to go with the more Americanised Christmas movies in terms of iconic Christmas movies, don't we? I think my favourite iconic Christmas movie would have to be Miracle on 34th Street. I'd love to know what your favourite Christmas movie is.
The next Christmas culture shock on my list has to do with Christmas cards. Now, both countries do send Christmas cards, but Christmas cards actually originated in the UK, and I feel like they take this very seriously. Americans do send Christmas cards, so don't get me wrong that we don't, but I've definitely noticed that Christmas cards seem like even more of a thing to do here in the UK.
You know, I think Christmas cards are a bit of a dying tradition here in Australia. Yeah, you still share Christmas cards with your work colleagues, etc. Chances are you may exchange Christmas cards with family members on Christmas Day, but it's not the huge thing that it used to be. And I guess it comes down to, at the end of the day, a lot of people just put a Christmas message on their Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and that's their Merry Christmas to everyone they know. It suits those of us who have ADHD and who used to frequently be running out of time to get Christmas cards done, but it's still a shame that the tradition is gradually going away.
And the next thing on my list has to do with Christmas Eve. Typically in the US, Christmas Eve culturally is very much a family day. Then I moved to the UK and I found out that a lot of people are going to the pub on Christmas Eve, maybe with family, but possibly to meet up with friends who are also in town, especially if you're younger and people have moved away for uni and stuff like that and are back maybe visiting their parents. Christmas Eve doesn't tend to be, in my experience here in the UK, totally kept as like that family day as it does seem to be done in the US more often. This also could relate to religion and how religious Americans are, because in America, typically most of us are going to a Christmas Eve church service. And so again, it kind of sets the tone for the day. Whereas here in the UK, of course, some people do go, but plenty of people don't.
Yeah, Australia's definitely more like the UK, where if you've got a young family, then of course you're going to stay home on Christmas Eve and do a very family oriented Christmas Eve. But even then, it's not a huge thing. I think, you look out to see if you can see Santa with the kids. Maybe you might let the kids open one present on Christmas Eve, but it's not a huge family thing. It's just like, the nuclear family probably just together. It's not certainly something where a whole bunch of family members get together. As for going out to pubs or whatever on Christmas Eve, yeah, I think for a lot of older Australians, or Australians that don't have kids, then yeah, hanging out with your mates on Christmas Eve can be a bit of a tradition. In terms of Christmas Eve services, we tend not to do that. People will go to midnight services here in Australia, but you tend not to have Christmas Eve services. Not that I'm aware of anyway. Usually it's a midnight service and then regular church in the morning. Let me know if you do it differently where you are.
And the next Christmas culture shock as an American moving to the UK had to do with suddenly realizing just how big American Christmas decorations are. People do decorate for Christmas, but it tends to be a little bit more understated. Compare that to some of the many yards that you'll see in America that look like this, and you come to the UK and you're like, wow, there is really no Christmas spirit here. That's not true. The Christmas spirit is just not necessarily displayed as an 8-foot inflatable snowman. In fact, I found an article all about a man who had received a giant inflatable Christmas decoration on accident. And this just goes to show you that somebody having a giant inflatable Christmas decoration in the UK is the news of the day, compared to America where it is just a random Wednesday in December.
And then, if you look at the video I put out the other day, apparently, even compared to the UK, Australians are far less out there when it comes to decorations. I know you'd be very unlikely to see a giant Santa like that in someone's yard here in Australia. Mostly it's just the, plastic things with lights on them. And then, let's admit it, few of us go to the effort of putting Christmas decorations outside our houses. It's just not a tradition here in Australia. It's something that has only been, it's only started in the last 10, 20 years, and you don't see it at every house. It's not expected at every house. People do it because they want to, but there's no pressure to do so. I actually like that.
And the final Christmas culture shock on my list has to do with what is eaten on Christmas Day here in the UK, and that is traditionally turkey. Interesting to an American because turkey is our Thanksgiving meal, so most families won't have turkey again for Christmas. Traditionally speaking, if you had to pick one item, a Christmas ham is going to be the most popular, and this is especially what you'll see depicted in American films and TV shows. That doesn't mean everyone in America does ham on Christmas Day. There is a little bit more variation, but traditionally in the UK, if you're going to ask a family what they're having on Christmas Day, it really is usually going to be turkey unless they're vegetarian.
I actually find it really surprising that Americans don't have turkey as part of their Christmas dinner, because if I were to think about which country I thought ate the most turkey, it would definitely be the United States. I mean, any time of year they'll go and they'll have turkey sandwiches, whereas in Australia, probably the only time that we eat turkey is Christmas time. We don't eat it through the year. We mainly eat chicken. But that said, Christmas Day in Australia, it's a real mix of meats. So you have your turkey, probably have a chicken for those of us who prefer chicken because it's moist, bit nicer than turkey. Probably have some sort of red meat there, so maybe a bit of roast beef or something. And yeah, you'll also have a ham. So I guess we do a bit of all of that. In terms of vegetarian stuff, in our family, because we are, well, my sister's vegetarian, I'm kind of about 90% vegetarian in that I prefer plant-based stuff. I don't know why, I just do. We will have tofurkey, which is the plant-based turkey, or there are some really yummy roast rolls that are like a roast plant-based thing with stuffing in the middle that's really yummy. So I guess we're almost having turkey. Please don't come at me for that. We recognise that obviously having vegetarian turkey sounds odd. It's more about just, the flavours. It tastes different. It does taste very different from turkey. It's about recognising the tradition, I guess. So that brings us to the end of this video. I really like her videos because she does explain things well, she is quite thoughtful, and she's not judgmental. I really hate videos where Americans look at something that's different to America and they essentially tell you that it's not as good as America because it's different. Whereas she doesn't say that ever. She's acknowledging the differences. She acknowledges where things perhaps don't work for her, like she doesn't like Christmas pudding. But she doesn't say, oh, Christmas pudding is just the most disgusting food on the planet. Which I've heard some Americans use that sort of term, descriptions for Australian foods. So, yeah, definitely I enjoyed this one. So if you're watching this on Christmas Day, Merry Christmas. Hope you have a lovely day. If not, just thank you for watching anyway. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Also hit the like button and leave a comment below. I'll catch you in the next one.